I love the old Sierra music. It still gets me. Way down the epicness of the music here, though. Occasionally it drowns me out. I have to do retake. I kept one of Grimrock because its music really is just that epic, where you can just like listen to the music and the gameplay. Kind of my voice drifts in and out in between. Hi everybody, I'm Injinjo. This is What to Play Next. This is the Castle of Dr. Brain. It was actually one of the all-time best computer games to learn about computers. They teach you everything from the basics of mathematic puzzle solving, which you wouldn't think would be involved, but despite the fact that we use a symbolic logic interface now in the form of JavaScript, you actually really do need to know the basics of the interface between integers and, or the interchange between integers and shapes, just to have graphic user interfaces. And it goes through everything all the way from that to actual hardware and how that interacts. So when I left off last time, because we did do an installment on this, we were working on the numeric grid. I do tend to just jam on these puzzles because I am very shape oriented. So I'll just move them around until I get them right. Some people do use an algorithm like you would in Sudoku or anything like that. I tend to, like I said, just be very hands-on, and I'm a kinetic learner, so that's how I do that. So we're going to skip ahead to where that video left off. Okay, yay! So we got the grid sorted out, and they give you a code word to enter in with the super secret code breaker that it's in the manual. I actually rent my video games when they're really retro from an online library, so you do have to play them entirely online, but I think it's worth it. Some of these you can't even buy, so they do have them online in storage at archive.org, and like I said, you do play the entire thing online. Tic-tac-toe hockey. But it's definitely, if it's the best way to learn computers, then it's totally worth it. Inside a drawer, you find the sliding tile puzzle. The object is to arrange the tiles correctly by sliding tiles into the empty space. It'll be 1, 2, 3 across the top, 4, 5, 6 across the bottom, 7, 8 on the left side of the bottom row. So these puzzles are interesting to me. When I teach somebody this, what I'm teaching them is theory. And Jacksepticeye just covered Detroit Become Human. And it was an interesting series. He commented very frequently on the graphics, and I thought that that was cool because with this sort of puzzle, what you actually are doing is creating an opportunity. As you could see, what I was doing is moving a tile into an empty space. That's what people do when they walk around. So as I went, what I had to do was find an open space and move the tile that I wanted into it. Now, the graphic user interface was so herky-jerky, which wasn't a big deal because they were Androids, but the problem with it was, I don't think that they did that on purpose. There was a very flat background, and the graphic user interface didn't account for that empty space movement. So that was something in computers that somebody would have wanted to look at, this idea of taking advantage of an empty space to move the things that you want into it. So what they did in this particular instance, you have to get used to the idea of substituting symbols and things like that when you're working in between shapes and integers, because 0 is an integer, 0 is you. And when you represent that with shapes, what you're actually doing is focusing on everything outside of you. So the way that people got, Leibniz and Isaac Asimov came up with this concept at exactly the same time. It's called calculus. And I think Leibniz originally released it, like he released it first, but the history records show that Isaac Asimov had actually come up with the idea first. And they ran in different circles, so nobody thought there was any cheating or anything like that. But what they had was, what it is a representational system using Greek letters like sigma to show that you were adding up sets of numbers to represent irregular shapes. So you got to get used to this concept of moving words into shapes, and that's what they did with this door lock. It was like, as soon as you can get your mind around the concept that each of the code words that they gave you, hockey, blackjack, tic-tac-toe, whatever, were actually represented in this grid of shapes. So it's this one first and then this one, and that's actually how you graph things, provided there's not a z-axis, which again, you're always 0. Something people don't always get even when they're using Unity as a game engine. Then you can actually get past this lock and into the next room. So it was pretty cool. I'm Anjindra. This is what to play next. We are going to go through into the next room, which actually has a German setup. We've been moving in between, like I said, mostly probably Russian is how I would describe the middle room here. Because they do almost all of their figuring using shapes. A lot of them are also afraid of infinity because of that, which is a long story. But they do almost all of their figuring because of shapes, which is one of the reasons that they're on the space program with us, with Canada, and with Japan, is because we all have these very different ways of thinking about math. They go together incredibly well when we have these very difficult logistical and physical problems. They're great for allies when it comes to that. So that one was kind of Russian because you're thinking in terms of empty spaces, you're thinking in terms of perspective, but you're also measuring out in integers while you do that, and that is how you get into computers. And if you notice, everyone that I listed is extraordinarily into computers. Like, that's very much a big business for them. The next room that we go into is German. Now, Germans have a fascination with time. I don't know if it's because they existed at roughly the same time as the Holy Roman Empire and there was a lot of clashes. The Holy Roman Empire uses Roman numerals, and they actually do reference that in the next room, so you'll see that in the next installment. They did that for troop movements and how they counted that. So that was an entirely different system of thinking that was viewed from the top down instead of this outside in that we had, which is Russian. And then also Norwegian. Actually, Russians tend to put themselves at the center and they teach groups to look from the outside. Norwegians tend to put themselves entirely on the outside and look in. And then Romans, the Roman numeral accounting, you look down on something and you actually figure out, like Maurice's Strategikon. I don't know how to pronounce the last part, but it's one of the greatest all-time war books ever written, aside from Sun Tzu's Art of War, which is something else entirely. So that's what we run into, and then this German sense of timekeeping, where you clock in to go to work, and they're kind of, like I said, walking you towards a programmer's path of life. So that's why we're putting it on here. Hopefully you found it educational and can introduce your kid to it. We love being a part of the gaming community, and we're glad that you joined us for the ride. So drop us a like and subscribe. Thank you for coming along, and as always, much love.